Crockett versus Tallarico for the very important Texas Senate seat.
But I stand before you because I started my life.
Why this start in the middle? Is this just the very beginning?
Off as an actual CSR. I worked phones at Western Union. I then went on to work phones for MCI WorldCom. And I know that it was the CWA that actually fought against those systems. You see, we're living in a time in which systems are clearly rigged against us. And I am here to tell
God, the audio on this is terrible. It looks like this is where the video is hosted, though.
You that while the system has been fighting me, I have been fighting them back. So whether we are talking about as a public defender, as a state representative, or as a U.S. Congresswoman, I am here to fight the system that is holding so many of us down.
What system?
So when I was a public defender, it came down to those indigent folk, because it seems like some people get a get out of jail free card while other people who need that card.
Remember when she said we need Latin people in the country because black people aren't going back to the cotton fields or something? That was pretty good.
It seemed to find any type of cards. When it came down to being a state representative, I was one of the co-leads to make sure that we fled the state over voting rights. And ultimately, Governor Abbott...
Say hi to the Tallarico team. They watch you. Oh, bad taste, huh? Maybe I will vote for Crockett. Hey.
...decided to respond by sending me a warrant for my arrest, which I currently have framed. And finally, as a U.S. Congresswoman, I have fought so diligently, and so many of you are very well aware of those fights. But more importantly, we know that the President of the United States decided that he would then come after our voices, an authentic, unbought and unbossed voice in D.C. And that's why they started with the redistricting in Texas. Thank you so much.
Mr. Tallarico, we now go to your opening statement. You have...
Should we have open borders or at minimum an analog to ICE? ICE did not exist 25 years ago. The border police, the U.S. Border Patrol, regardless of what you think about U.S. border policy, we literally do not need ICE. There was no reason for that institution to exist. It was created after the Department of Homeland Security, or with it. They did not exist before 9/11. We've had Border Patrol for centuries.
60 seconds.
Well, first, thank you to the AFL-CIO for hosting us. As a proud union member, it's an honor to be here with so many of my union brothers and sisters. I also want to thank Congressman Crockett for being here. Before I was a legislator, I was a public school teacher on the west side of San Antonio, one of the poorest zip codes in the entire state of Texas. On the west side, I learned that the real fight in this country is not left versus right, it's top versus bottom. We will not win this race in November with the same...
Remarkably, the INS actually was a semi-well-functioning immigration system. Yeah, because the INS worked under the DOJ. The INS was just a branch, like the Marshals, right? Like they were law enforcers who were specifically tasked with immigration. ICE is like a paramilitary group, you know? The difference in framing between the people who deal with immigration work with the Department of Justice, and the people who work with immigration work with Homeland Security is very different. They folded the INS into ICE, but they are not the same institution.
Old politics of division. Billionaires want us looking left and right at each other, so we're not looking up at them. We are building a people-powered movement to beat them in November. We've recruited more than 13,000 volunteers. We have traveled to every corner.
They got rid of the INS? Yeah, in 2003 when they made ICE.
Texas, because we're not writing off any voter or any community, and we have shattered grassroots fundraising records without taking a dime of corporate PAC money. That is how we take power back for working people, and today I'm asking you to join us.
Thank you both, and I'm sure you've heard this before. A Democrat has not won a statewide race in 32 years, so electability is important. In the context of electability, style matters, and the next question aims at outlining each of your styles.
And we'll start with Ms. Crockett. You have referred to your authenticity as your political superpower. You went viral for your clash with Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, and you've called Governor Greg Abbott Governor Hot Wheels. In 60 seconds, explain why that is the right style to win a U.S. Senate seat.
Listen, we are not looking at politics as usual. Just today, we just had another person gunned down in the streets in Minneapolis. And so for anyone that believes that we are going to be able to respond to this in a normal way. I think that they've got it wrong. But more importantly, when we talk about electability, how many of you have heard things like, we are the party of the educational elites? We've heard that over and over. We've heard things like, we are losing African-American men. We are losing Latinos. We have heard these things. Right now, we know when we look at our polling, when it comes to working class people, I am leading by 20 points. We know that I am leading when it comes to African-American men. We know that
wow, no shit, you're leading with black voters? What a shock.
Overall, women are going to play a really big role in deciding who gets elected, and I am leading amongst women.
What about white men?
So at the end of the day,
Texas.
when we look at the numbers,
what about
the numbers
Latin
are there.
men?
This is about whether or not we have the will, and right now, people are not happy with the Democrat.
By the way, massive DC consultancy brain, you think of people only as demographics. Rather than having a unifying message that applies to people, all you have to say, yeah, I'm popular with this subdemographic and this subdemographic and this subdemographic, you know? From a person who doesn't talk to real people. Also, authenticity. She's pro-Israel. Remember her being confronted on her pro-Israel vote? She got really indignant, and rather than answering the questions from the person with the camera in her face, she said, you can go look at my votes. They're public. And then you look at them and they're bad.
Party. I've seen the polling. What they want is someone who is going to be unafraid in the face of what we are facing right now, which is someone who believes he's a king.
Mr. Tallarico, before we get to your style, we do want to get your reaction to what Ms. Crockett just said. You'll have 30 seconds for this.
Well, I think the Congresswoman and I both agree that we have a moral imperative to win this election in November. If we don't win, we can't help people. I have seen the consequences in the trenches of the Texas legislature of losing elections. I've seen my constituents get hurt. I've seen rights that we took for granted rolled back. I've seen schools close. I've seen people not be able to access basic health care. So we have to win in November. I think she and I are committed to that. I hope all of us in this room are committed to that singular goal.
Mr. Tallarico, you have said that your campaign is shaped by two commandments: love God, love your neighbor. But a lot of Democrats want a fighter. So why do you think that your approach is the right one to get you to Washington? And you have 60 seconds for this.
God, the audio.
I don't think you should believe anything a politician says. I think you should look at what a politician has done. The best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. And the people in this room know that I have fought tooth and nail for our values in the Texas House of Representatives. I have gone toe-to-toe with the billionaires who are trying to dismantle public education in this state. Tim Dunn, Ferris Wilks, Betsy DeVos, Jeff Yass. Those same billionaires are now trying to dismantle public education at the federal level. I led the fight against Greg Abbott's private school voucher scam that would have taken money out of our underfunded schools and given it to wealthy parents who already have their kids in private school. Now those billionaires are introducing that same voucher scam at the federal level, and they're gutting the Department of Education. So we need a proven fighter for our schools, for our values, for our constituents in the halls of power in Washington, D.C. I think we need a teacher in the United States Senate.
Ms. Crockett, your reaction to Mr. Tallarico's comments, you have 30 seconds for this.
I agree that we absolutely need a fighter. And when I look at my track record, the track record is in this moment. It's about the fierce urgency of now. We are living in a time that many of us have never seen in this country and honestly never thought that we would see. And so I think that as we see a record number of retirements on the federal level from both the Democrats and Republicans, that boils down to people not being able to fight in this particular environment. I think that I've evidenced that. In fact, James and I served in the state house together. He's actually been elected longer than I have been elected, yet he's not as known right now because I have engaged in these fights and they have been right there on the front lines where people could see me out front. I think that because of, I didn't get my bad.
Moving on, we're going to stick with you, Ms. Crockett. We have a follow-up question.
It's like the third time she's awkwardly trailed off after the bell dings.
When it comes to electability, what's the political risk that you are willing to take that you feel like your opponent would not take in order to win the U.S. Senate seat?
I think that I will do the edgy things, the things that the political consultants will never tell you to do. Because right now, people are hurting. This isn't about games. It's not about politics as usual. It's not about who sounds as clean as possible. It is about tapping into the rawness of this moment. I have been to Minneapolis and heard the stories of the people on the ground as they are being accosted. And obviously we've got killings that are going on. And now we have the DOJ that has decided that they want to prosecute the wife of Renee Good. I have been there in California after David Huerta of SEIU had been incarcerated by ICE. And
she's actually allergic to saying what she would do. Like every time someone hands her the mic, she's like, "You've not seen governance like this before. I'm gonna hit it down. You won't believe how hard I go. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, take a look at this. You've never seen the shit that I'm about to lay out." She never actually says what she's gonna do. It's all like a build up and no drop.
I listened to his story and met with him because we went there. I have been to Chicago. I am here to tell you that I am not just sitting in DC. I am getting out into the streets. And right now, to be perfectly honest, if we're going to win and keep our country, we're going to need somebody who can file bills, but also knows how to be a street fighter. And so that is my response.
Mr. Tallarico, same question, 30 seconds. What's the political risk that you are willing to take that you feel your opponent would not?
Here's the risk I'm willing to take. Congresswoman Crockett and I are on the same team. I think we've already seen in this debate that there's going to be a temptation by the media to pit us against each other. But we are all focused on the same goal, which is winning in November and stopping a Senator Ken Paxton. And so
he might be too nice for this. Maybe it's the right strategy. I'm not sure.
I think in this debate, you're going to see that Congresswoman Crockett and I agree on a whole lot more than we disagree on. And that unity is a threat to the billionaires who want to pit us all against each other, and who right now are running this country, running this economy, and we need someone who has stood up to those billionaires in our nation's capital.
We want to move to the topic of immigration enforcement now. As many of you know, there was a deadly shooting involving federal immigration officers today in Minneapolis.
The House this week approved a spending bill that included funding for ICE. Ms. Crockett, you voted against the bill Thursday. Can you explain your opposition and tell us whether you support the idea of defunding or abolishing ICE? You have 60 seconds.
I absolutely voted against this bill. There was no way I was going to continue to pump a historic amount of money into this rogue organization that is going out and is violating people's rights every single day on American cities. I was just not going to do it. At the end of the day, right now, I think that we need to clean house from top to bottom. I ended up signing on to impeachment of Kristi Noem, as well as I call her Cruel Kristi. I signed on to that. But I don't even know. Here's my big issue. Right now, we have an administration all throughout that is deciding, yes, these are the laws, but we're just going to ignore them. They are not following the law. So why are we rewarding bad behavior? And that's basically what it is. This is the 5th highest funded military force in the entire world. And what are they doing? They're killing people in the middle of the street. They decided to execute a mother of 3 in broad daylight. I don't understand how we are sitting here and acting like this is normal. The only reason trying to be respectful of the time.
I do want to ask you, though, would you support abolishing or defunding ICE?
We absolutely have to clean house. Whatever that looks like, I am willing to do it. Because if there are truly Proud Boys that are currently in ICE, that's a problem.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Tallarico.
Should be noted that everyone in leadership positions at ICE, including Bovino, and also both of the high-profile murderers of Renee Good and Pretty, both of them longtime veteran members of ICE and Border Patrol, respectively.
How would you vote on ICE funding measures, and do you believe ICE should be abolished or defunded? You have 60 seconds.
ICE shot a mother in the face. ICE kidnapped a 5-year-old boy. ICE executed a man in broad daylight on our streets just this morning. It's time to tear down this secret police force and replace it with an agency that actually is going to focus on public safety. We need to impeach Kristi Noem. We need to prosecute agents who've abused their power. We have to haul these masked men before Congress so the world can see their faces. We should be cracking down on the cartels, not our communities. We should be prosecuting gang members, not small business owners. We should be hunting down human traffickers, not moms and babies. We need comprehensive immigration reform in this country. We need to remake this broken immigration system in our own image.
I think if you're going after the Gestapo, you don't need to say, like, we're going after the predatory usury lenders, not after innocent Jews. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if the problem that we're dealing with right now is Gestapo, you don't need to moderate your language with like, oh, well, don't worry, like the bad targets you're going after. In Texas, you do. Yeah, it's true they are running in Texas.
And once we win a Senate majority, we will do exactly that.
Just to be clear, though, would you, in 10 seconds, abolish or defund ICE?
We have seen this historic increase in funding for ICE. That money has come out of our healthcare. So what I would say is that we should take that money back and put it in our communities where it belongs.
Staying on the topic of ICE with a follow-up question, Mr. Tallarico, you'll have 30 seconds for this. One comment that you have made is that ICE
It probably is like on the left side of what you can get away with in Texas.
should crack down on cartels. So what does cracking down on cartels look like to you?
So we have a law enforcement agency that is going after American citizens, that's going after our neighbors, including our undocumented neighbors. There was a mom and dad up in DFW, the Vargases. They own a dry cleaners. They've had it for 20 years. They're beloved by their customers, by their community members. They raised a daughter who is now attending Texas Tech University. On their way back from Tech, after dropping her off, they were detained by ICE. If our law enforcement officials are going after the Vargases, that means they're not going after the cartels or rapists or murderers. And so I think whatever we think on this issue, we should have law enforcement focused on public safety.
Ms. Crockett, a follow-up question for you. This week, you proposed the Track ICE Act,
Yes.
which would require immigration-related flight data be released within 72 hours. Explain how this transparency would affect the way ICE operates. You have 30 seconds.
I've had too many people call my office and not know where their loved ones are. I have too many people that don't know whether or not they are safe. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know that we can ever say that you're going to be right here in Texas at the Dilley facility. We know that they just found that there was a detainee that had been killed. They ruled that it was a homicide. That is the same facility that they took that precious 5-year-old to. I plan to go and conduct oversight at on Wednesday with one of my colleagues. The sad part is that if I conduct oversight, I have to look at somebody like my colleague, LaMonica McIver, who is now facing 17 years in prison because she.
What the hell?
All right, this follow-up is for both of you. If elected senator, you
Star.
will represent all Texans,
Mods!
many of whom support deporting undocumented immigrants. How do you balance your feelings toward ICE versus the Texans you will represent who support the enforcement we're seeing right now? Ms. Crockett, we start with you. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, as it relates to the enforcement that we see right now, let me be clear. They are supposed to do immigration and customs enforcement, not going after U.S. citizens, not going after people that are documented. That is not what they are supposed to do, but that is what they are doing. They are turning us into Nazi Germany by saying they're going to go door to door. They are going after people because of their accent or the color of their skin, because this Supreme Court gave them carte blanche ability to do so. So all we want ICE to do is to do what ICE was created to do, and unfortunately that's not what they are doing.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tallarico, same question. How do you balance your feelings toward ICE versus...
I feel like the problem we keep running into here is just that what nobody wants to grapple with is the fundamental problem with ICE and Border Patrol, as evidenced by the fact that these murderers and cretins and thugs coming from the organization have, in many cases, been there for years and years. They're not all people who were just hired a year ago, you know? Which is that the organization is fundamentally Hitlerite. It has always been like this. Bavino has been there for decades. God, what's his name? I'm blanking. The big dumb oaf, the guy who looks like an ogre, can't even speak right. What's his, Tom Homan, thank you. He's been here. He was there under Obama for years now, for decades now. The people in these organizations have been waiting for a president who would let them cut loose. Is this a pro-Tallarico or Crockett channel? I'm pro-Tallarico. Crockett is a deep state agent, servant of Israel, etc., etc.
People.
Just another like DC shill, a plant, someone who's there to divide us.
You would represent who support deporting undocumented immigrants. You have 30 seconds.
So my family is from the border. My mom grew up in Laredo, Texas. I feel like Texans understand this issue of immigration more so than people in other states. because we live with it, both the benefits and the challenges. So what I've said is that our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front and a lock on the door. We can welcome immigrants who want to live the American dream. We can build a pathway to citizenship for those neighbors who have been here, making us richer and stronger, and we can keep out people who mean to do us harm.
All right, well, this debate is being
Probably about the best you can do in Texas.
hosted by the Texas AFL-CIO, and some of their union members have some pre-recorded questions for the candidates.
We start with one from Calvin Mackey, first business agent for International Longshoremen's Association, Local 24 in Houston. Here's the question.
As a longshoreman, I've seen firsthand how artificial intelligence and automation driven by corporate interests has resulted in job losses. If elected, what will you prioritize at the federal level to ensure workers have a voice in artificial intelligence implementation and are protected from unfair uses of artificial intelligence?
Mr. Tallarico, and I believe Mr. Mackey is here in the crowd. How would you prioritize the federal level to ensure workers have a voice in AI implementation and are protected from unfair uses of AI? You have 60 seconds.
Well, when I was a public school teacher, I was a member of my local teachers union, the San Antonio Alliance. Shout out to the Alliance. And now that I'm a state lawmaker, I'm a proud member of the Texas State Employees Union. And I'm proud to say that in the Texas legislature, I have a 100% pro-worker voting record from the AFL-CIO. You've had my back when I was a worker in the classroom, and I've had your back as a legislator. And that includes when it comes to AI. In the U.S. Senate, we have—
That's nice. I think I'm mostly interested in their responses to ICE. I wonder if there's anything here on Israel. Oh, do you support expanded Supreme Court? Sure, I'll hear it.
And you would vote to impeach?
Gromer, I'm not going to articulate articles of impeachment here at a political debate, but if those charges are brought in the U.S. House and they come before the U.S. Senate, I will carefully evaluate them, I will weigh the evidence, and I will do my duty as a U.S. Senator.
All right, let's talk about the U.S. Supreme Court now. Ms. Crockett, you have co-sponsored legislation to expand the Supreme Court. You argue that the court has been politicized and no longer reflects democratic accountability. In 60 seconds, what specifically led you to that position?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. Just to give a little bit of history on the expansion of the court has been expanded a total of 7 times in the history of this country. The last time that this court was expanded was 150 years ago. Our country has actually expanded a little bit faster than the court has. So that's number one. We also know, because of the games that were played in the United States Senate, we know that all 3 of these justices that he got to appoint, he shouldn't have gotten 3 appointments. We also know that
At 38, there's an Israel question. Okay.
Should be placed on U.S. military aid to Israel. You have 60 seconds.
Oh.
yeah, so when it needs to make it for, at a very minimum, our fundamental issues.
Well, let's turn to foreign policy. Ms. Crockett, I have a question for you. What conditions, if any, should be placed on U.S. military aid to Israel? You have 60 seconds.
Yeah, so when it comes down to aid, I want people to understand that right now, again, we have an enforcement issue in this country. We have rules. If there is a violation of international law, then we are not supposed to continue to send the money. We are supposed to stop the money. Right now, our issue isn't whether or not we're writing enough laws. Our issue is whether or not we are actually going to enforce them. And right now, as we have Republicans that control the House, Republicans that control the Senate, and a Republican in the White House, unfortunately, there's a bunch of cowardness instead of courage to decide that they are going to say, this is the reports that we have, and therefore we need to enforce the law. I'm happy to say that in May of 2024, I signed onto a letter that was led by Representative Jayapal. That letter actually went to President Biden. It was specifically on this issue and saying, President Biden, you don't need to authorize further munitions at this moment because there is evidence that there are.
You voted for Israel funding after everyone knew they were committing war crimes. You're like, well, we shouldn't have been able to give them funding because of the war crime. You voted for the funding after the war crimes.
Problems, and therefore there are violations of international law.
Mr. Tallarico, same question. What conditions, if any, should be placed on U.S. military aid to Israel. You have 60 seconds.
As an educator who has fought for children, seeing what's happening in Gaza makes me sick to my stomach. I quoted a theologian the other day who said, "I screamed at God for the starving children until I realized the starving children was God screaming at me." God is screaming at all of us in Gaza as we speak. Yes, Israel has a right to defend its people, certainly after October 7th, the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu does not have the right to wage war against civilians. He does not have the right to restrict aid. He does not have the right to use famine or collective punishment as tactics in that effort. And so I have said that if I'm in the United States Senate, I will use every bit of this country's financial and diplomatic leverage to end the death and destruction in Gaza, which means banning offensive weapons to the Netanyahu government and ensuring that we have candidates all across this country who are going to speak the truth about this issue. And I have done that repeatedly. I would not vote to Benjamin Netanyahu that he is currently using to slaughter children in Gaza.
Yeah, that's not what I was hoping to hear.
Let's stick with foreign policy. Ms. Crockett, you have publicly criticized the U.S. military operation in Venezuela and the capture of Nicolas Maduro. In 30 seconds, do you think the president needs congressional approval before taking military action against a foreign country?
Absolutely. We had a briefing on this issue. I was not satisfied with that briefing. At the end of the day,
Do you have to be a Zionist to get anywhere in U.S. politics? Yes. Basically, all like military policing, surveillance, tech, and like all the other like big, robust industries that control the world have roots between America and Israel. We've used Israel as like a satellite state to externalize some of the more obviously awful stuff those industries do and what they test and what they're interested in.
this president is seemingly trying to plunge us not only into a civil war with ICE, but he's also trying to plunge
What
us.
were you hoping to hear? I'm tired of hearing, of course, the people of Israel can defend themselves after October 7th. I like even saying that is a concession to the lie that anyone believes otherwise. Like anyone on earth thinks that it would have been bad for the IDF to fight back against the Hamas insurgents who invaded Israel on October 7th. Obviously, no shit, yes. Though the way the IDF did it ended up killing a ton of their own civilians. But like by saying that, you are implying that there's any real debate there, as if what the past 2.5 years hasn't just been a completely one-sided slaughter, right? It's ridiculous. Of course, the German people have a right to defend themselves against the blah blah blah. Yeah, bullshit. Ridiculous. Also, I'm tired of the defensive weapons bullshit. Weapons are weapons. No more offensive weapons? How about no more defensive weapons? Why the fuck are we paying for their defensive weapons? They have free healthcare over there. Maybe pull some of the money from that fund to pay for their own Iron Dome rockets, okay? Why the fuck are we paying for that? Why have we just assumed responsibility for that? Not even in NATO.
Into World War III. And he's not trying to stop at Venezuela, which is why we must have a check on him, because he is threatening Greenland. He has decided that he wanted to threaten Cuba, and he's talking about going after Mexico, which happens to be our largest trade partner. He is consistent. We don't stop him. I am afraid about how many other folk are going to be trying to come after us. We have to stop him in this moment.
All right, Mr. Tellerico, you've also criticized the current administration's military action in Venezuela. 30 seconds for the same question. Do you think the president needs congressional approval before taking military action against a foreign country?
Absolutely. We have to confront this new American imperialism.
I do believe there's value in having defensive weapons because we have to intercept missiles somehow. Sure, we have to. Israel doesn't. I don't give a f if they get hit. Why the fuck? Why are my taxpayer dollars going to that? Do their taxpayer dollars go to protecting us? Are they paying for Narcan to be sent over across the Atlantic? I don't see why the f I should have to fund their shit. They keep starting wars. They bomb like every year. They bomb all their neighbors. They keep starting wars. Why the f why am I? They get what's coming to them. Okay. They start wars. They don't have no interest in making friends with their neighbors. Oh, we're getting attacked. No shit, buddy. This was her statement on Israel after October 7th, where she only cared about voting no in Israel aid because she said the House Republicans were using it to sneak spending. What is this? Okay, this is pretty standard fare after October 7th, Pretty standard fare. Special interest influence on Congress. Sure. Final topic.
I agree. I mean, I'm running for the United States Senate because I think that it's time for us to do our best to try to unrig this system. Listen, I'm not a likely story. I didn't come from a family where everybody thought
me.
that I was going to end up in politics. And frankly, as I started this off, I said that I hate politics. At the end of the day, we need to do things like you were talking about the enrichment issue as it relates to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has enriched himself to the tune of $1.4 billion since he has been in office in violation of the emoluments clause of the United States Constitution. That's just in this term.
All right, we're tight on time. Let's move to Mr. Tallarico. A 30-second follow-up question for you. You've touched on themes of moral leadership and restoring accountability and trust in government. If elected to the Senate, what specific anti-corruption measures would you prioritize, and how would they be different from what Washington has already promised but failed to deliver?
Well, I've already outlined some of them: banning corporate PACs, banning super PACs, and banning members of Congress from trading stocks. I also think we need to ban forms of corruption that don't involve money. I think we need a
bill that it mandates the arrest of every member of the United States Supreme Court who does not vote to overturn Citizens United. Unironically, that's like an actual like end of days thing right there. I don't care how many laws we'd have to break to get that thing changed. Just here's a case. You're going to take this one immediately. You're going to bring it up, and this will overturn Citizens United. How do you rule? You rule against it. All right, buddy. Welcome to Gitmo. I'm sorry. You're going to be spending the rest of your life here.
National ban on gerrymandering across every state in this country. I think we need to overhaul the Supreme Court, which we talked about earlier. I think we need to pass term limits.
Arresting folks who are opposed to views. That sounds familiar. Yes, I think that when people vote to throw democracy to oligarchy, they should be arrested. Democracy needs to be actively defended. Democracy isn't just a fact of reality that exists with or without your input, you know? It's a system that has to be protected. So when the most powerful high priests in the country all decide, yeah, corporations are people, and you should be able to spend an infinite... Do you have any idea what spending on campaigns has looked like since the Citizens United? Hold on. You know what it looks like? This was basically like the death knell for the country. This was the funereal bell getting rung. It's only going to get worse. For a non-American, what's Citizens United? Citizens United was a ruling from the Supreme Court that essentially stated that corporations have the First Amendment right to spend their money for presidential campaigns. So now, like the cap went off basically in elections. So no longer was this considered bribery or election interference. Now it's like, oh well, of course BlackRock has a moral right to be able to give infinite money to, keep in mind, by the way, that in regular citizens, we have limits on direct campaign contributions. But obviously, like the way it works with PACs is different. The fact that it can be done through corporations obfuscates it, and the amount of money is just skyrocketed. I mean, this kind of proves you can't simply fix the system, because even if we have a bribes are illegal law, the politicians are incentivized to pass the make bribes legal law. It's like the thing that I read in that book on weapons that I had when I was a kid, okay? All defensive fortifications fail unless actively manned. There is no wall you can build, no trench you can dig, no moat you can fill, no landmine field you can lay, nothing that will stop people if unmanned. You need it to be manned. Otherwise, inevitably, people will find their way through it. There is no effective passive non-manned defense system, and there still isn't today. And there never will be. You need people actively protecting systems. You can't just set them up and hope they're so well constructed they will never be undone. Until we end Citizens United, you can't even really blame Democrats for taking billionaire money, because otherwise how could they compete with Republicans? Well, I can, because the only way they would even be given access to that billionaire money is if they were interested in fulfilling the wishes of those billionaires. We do still have a democracy, flawed as it is.
So people aren't making a career out of public service. And I think we can require, through federal statute, that every member of Congress hold at least one annual town hall in their districts so their constituents can hold them accountable. That's the kind of anti-corruption package that can restore people's faith in this system.
All right, thank you very much. Those are our questions, but the debate's not over yet because we want to move to closing statements. Mr. Tallarico, you have 60 seconds.
Well, thank you again to the AFL-CIO, and thank you to my friend Congresswoman Crockett for being here. And I just want to thank you all for being committed to this cause. of flipping Texas and changing the politics of our state. I got into this because of my students. I got into the classroom in the fall of 2011, right after the state legislature cut $5 billion from our schools. I had 45 kids in one classroom. There weren't enough desks for all those kids, so I had students sitting on the air conditioning unit. It's unacceptable. And that's why I ran for the state legislature. It's why I flipped a Trump district that no one
From an electoral standpoint, how does someone compete with another candidate that receives billions from corporate entities? Mamdani won. Bernie Sanders came within a spitting distance of winning despite massive opposition from the media and also huge amounts of corporate money going towards Hillary Clinton and not towards him. We still have it. At the end of the day, as bad as things are, the will of the people still matters, and it always will. You know, the will of the people still matters. Even in shithole failed democracies like Russia, they still have to make concessions to keep people from getting too upset.
Was winnable by bringing people together to change this broken, corrupt political system. And that's exactly what we can do in this race in November. We have a moral imperative to win. And I know all of you are committed to that cause.
All right, Ms. Crockett, 60 seconds for your closing statement.
One of the things that
Bernie and Mamdani are truly extraordinary candidates that were able to raise funding on their own. Yes, we have to be extraordinary. You're up against the deep state. You're up against the greatest concentration of wealth and power that has ever existed at any point in human history. Yeah, you have to be extraordinary. But there are, you know what? There are lots of extraordinary people. It's not just Bernie and Mamdani. There are, just within the United States, literally millions of extraordinary people who could do extraordinary things if given the chance. So our job is to give them that chance, you know? We lay the groundwork. We pave the road. We establish the environment that allows exceptional people to rise.
you said just a minute ago was a lot of people feel as if the system is rigged. As someone who has seen up close and personal how badly things are working in D.C., I have been fighting on the front lines in this corrupt administration. I am willing to take the chances that, frankly, most are not willing to take. I unfortunately have law enforcement that has to be with me all the time because of the death threats. I'm not telling you that so that you can send me your prayers. I'm telling you that because whoever goes to the United States Senate is going to have to be ready for real war. This is how bad it is. As I was traveling to East Texas last weekend, we received a phone call of a woman whose house they were having to go to because that particular woman had stated over and over and over that she was about to come and kill me. I am here to tell you that it is life or death as we see what is happening in Minnesota and otherwise.
All right, that concludes our debate. We want to thank the candidates for participating. We want to thank the Texas AFL-CIO for...
I was disappointed by some of Tallarico's answers here. I'm not going to lie, but overall, I still easily support him over Crockett. You know, I don't need to be his greatest champion to support him here. I think it's a pretty clear cut. You know, to be fair, it's Texas. No, exactly. It is Texas, and it is a fact that they do not have a chance unless they appeal to some extent to independents and some Republicans, which is, you know, I mean, that's rough. But it's Texas, so I think you might be difficult to satisfy. Me? Oh, for sure. Yeah, of course. But I try to moderate that, you know. I'm not unaware of that. I know that the average politician in America is not trying to appeal to a socialist live streamer who says the phrase deep state like 800 times a stream lately, you know? Or whose response to seeing like any police action is demonic, pedophile, Israel worshipping, et cetera, et cetera. Like I'm aware of the fact that I'm slightly outside of the political media and the Overton window. You can't see me through it. You know, you have to like look in through the side, but I don't think that invalidates my perspective. What is Crockett doing? She's raising no money. Yeah, pretty interesting. Not entirely sure why. Where's what's his face? Where's Ken Paxton? Is Ken Paxton not raising any money? He thinks he can win without ads. Okay. No, he can't. Did the phrase "the powers that be" become lexicon for you after playing Pathologic? No. It's a more widely known phrase than that, but I do appreciate their use there. There's something mystical about the phrase "the powers that be" that I like, you know? It's a little bit, you know, it's a little bit flowery. We need Paxton to win. Tallarico and Crockett have no chance against Cornyn. Yeah, but we really don't want Paxton to win, though. Worst case scenario would be Paxton beating Tallarico or Crockett. Isn't Paxton the current governor? No, Paxton is the current AG. He's also a freak. Why not Paxton? Because Paxton is incredibly evil. Is that the anti-sodomy guy? Yes, it's the anti-sodomy guy. Paxton is the person who said that if the Supreme Court let him, he would enforce anti-sodomy laws. As in, like, he would send Texas State Police into gay clubs or personal residences to arrest people for having homosexual intercourse. Sounds like gay people should start having heterosexual intercourse. I've been doing it for years. I've been finding a way.